Well, welcome to today's heartfelt and powerful episode. And as always, when I introduce, I say we're going to go deep because we are. This is about transformation. And I couldn't be more honored today to have Dr. Paul Leftenegger, a conscious singer, songwriter, composer, interfaith minister, and a man whose music and message and mission have touched countless lives across the globe. Dr. Paul is a pioneer in the genre of conscious healing music, a genre he's created to promote self-love, self-worth, and a deeper connection to the divine. It is an honor to have him, but behind his music, his accolades, and his global reach lies a deeply personal journey, a journey that includes profound loss and transformation through the loss of his father, an event that forever shaped his path and inspired his mission of healing and love. His story is one of resilience, overcoming pain, and finding purpose through music. He's used his own experience to help others find strength, hope, and healing, becoming a beacon of light for those navigating their darkest moments. As Dr. Paul prepares his 8th album, Spheres of Love, which is already receiving incredible praise, he's turned to his global fan base for support. And I can't say enough about supporting him. This album, funded by the people who believe in his work, will continue his mission of spreading divine love, frequencies, and healing around the world. This new body of work is already receiving incredible gratitude from around the world from thought leaders such as Bruce Lipton and others. Paul's music is being used in classrooms to help children understand the importance of self-love and self-kindness and compassion, as well as within adult healing groups and workshop centers around the world to realign the inner space with the source, God, creator, universe, consciousness. So today we dive deep into Dr. Paul's powerful journey of transformation, the healing power of his music, and the deep connection between personal pain and global healing. We will also explore how you can be part of this beautiful project and help bring his music to even more people who need it. So, without further ado, welcome, Dr. Paul.
Thank you so much. That was really beautifully done too. Every time I'm on a different sort of platform, it's always lovely to see how people introduce the magnitude of that huge, gushing list that is quite humbling to hear. So thank you very much.
You're very
Well
welcome.
done.
So deserving
Well
are
done.
you? Yeah. I was going to ask you, kicking it off with, the choice to become a minister. How did that come about?
Well, this is sort of one of those things that I've noticed in my life is that it's kind of one of those things where at times things choose you that
Right.
you've often considered choosing yourself.
Right.
It was one of those moments where actually I was asked actually into a seminary, and I had wanted to find the right fit. And when I was a child, I actually wanted to be a priest. So I've always had sort of a call. And my message when I was younger was not a priest, not in the Catholic tradition.
Right.
And I was raised Catholic. However, the answer was always not this time, not that way. And, fast forwarding into, more current times, I was asked actually by the interfaith ministry sort of school that I'm part of, the new seminary.
Mm-hmm.
And it just sort of naturally happened. And it was during COVID, which allowed me the space and the time to do and to devote my studies. So it actually was perfect.
Wow, that is fascinating. COVID has done so many incredible things.
Yeah,
It really has. So many people are so negative about it. And, a lot of people that I have interviewed have had their profound, I would almost say transformation, resurrection during COVID.
yeah, it slowed things down. I think
Mm-hmm.
pros and cons, and there's certainly,
Right.
challenges and obviously lots of things around that. However, it definitely restructured your daily routines in such a way where we had time to do things that we maybe didn't think we had time to do otherwise in other times. So I totally agree though. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for sharing that. I was wondering, with regards to your journey, and it's been deeply shaped by the loss of your father. So how has this experience influenced your work, and how did it transform this pain into a source of strength for yourself as well as others?
Well, so that's a really, so just to kind of go back in terms of the timeline, just so my life is sort of divided into two parts, which I
Right.
always say before and after my father's suicide. And my father was 56 years old. It was right before his 57th birthday when this happened.
Okay.
It blindsided all of us. And I wasn't actually a public person in any capacity. I was actually a business person more so, and sort of in the process of opening up a juice company actually in Bermuda,
Oh my
of all things.
goodness.
So, and I'm married to a Bermudian, so that's sort of like the Bermuda connection. However,
Okay.
my father's suicide just completely, like, it was like being hit by an explosion and a freight train all at the same time. And, you break apart into the billions of pieces and have to try to figure out how to put it all back together and become a new you. And God instantly, like the morning that my father died, it was March the 6th of 2011. And I had a profound experience with God. And I
Mm,
was about to collapse and I said a prayer. And if anybody goes through any sort of, first responders sort of like traumatic event, it's very destabilizing because they send, everyone that works, it seems like, on the police force that day, ambulance, fire, like coroner, like it was a sea of insanity
wow.
that upon, my parents' home. And one of the things that happens is you just kind of go into shock, and you're in shock for so long.
Hmm.
So the thing that happened that day is when I was being interviewed by the police, which they treat it as a crime scene until they can otherwise determine, everything's, the way that you're told, telling the police through an interview. I remember having to excuse myself and go to the bathroom because I was about to collapse. And it's actually the truth. And when I went to do this, I said a prayer because I felt like I was just about to, like, just literally, like, just completely collapse.
Hmm.
And I went in front of the mirror and I had this experience where God showed me that everything was going to be okay.
Oh
And
my.
the thing that was really interesting is the inside of me. God showed me the inside of me was the outside of me. And I didn't really understand any part of that at the time. But when I look back at it now, and, it's very interesting to me with grief because grief shows you doorways that open that would never open otherwise. And I
Right.
think a lot of people I know for me personally, I was very scared of when my parents would transition. I never anticipated my father would die so young or that it would be by suicide. However, the thing that happened is I realized through my grief that there was so many things to explore within myself with
Hmm.
God, actually. And that really opened up. I think what I had been waiting for was actually God sort of showing me the way that I had kind of forgotten in many ways.
Right.
And I feel like in many ways, all of this was predestined in my life. And it's a weird thing when you talk about suicide that way, but I think I was prepared to become who I am now all
Hmm.
my life. And
Hmm.
now I serve God. So
Hmm.
being a pastor is very, very much my dharma and my karma all put in together as one.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you talk about the shock and like your world just blowing apart, in the work I do with family constellations and systemic trauma, it's considered to be like a bomb going off in the family, and those fractals, right? Those pieces
Exactly. Yeah.
get thrown out of us, and then it's a matter of you know reclaiming and collecting those missing pieces, right? Through, and that's obviously what you are doing with what you are doing, and it's I mean it's a beautiful mess,
It's it's exactly what it was. It was a
right?
horrendous, beautiful, that became a beautiful mess.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
it certainly wasn't without its struggles. And the
Oh
thing that I
no.
recognize, like when you talk about the fragments, putting them back together is actually like, it's like Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. You have to figure out how you're going to put this all together. And also you have to function in the world.
Right.
So, and
Exactly.
I can safely say I felt like I was sort of naturally on drugs for probably about 2 years.
Hmm.
And I think the thing that I realized too is once you've been through something and you survive probably your greatest fear, you realize how strong you are. And I think I think for me, that's something that I think I needed to work on immensely before, before my father died. I don't think I was very strong, really. Not the way that I am now. And I'm
Right.
spiritually very, like, I feel like all of my muscles had a really good workout
Hmm.
and my spiritual muscles are very, very strong.
Yeah, I get it. I totally do. It's like for me, listening to you, it's like making your messy your message.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good way to say it.
Making your messy your message, right? Now, moving on here with regards to your music and how it promotes healing and self-love, how did you learn to embrace those principles in your own life, especially in the face of such a
Yeah.
heartbreaking loss with your dad?
Well, so the thing that's very interesting to me is I actually sat down at the piano pretty much within the first 3 months after he died in March on the
Hmm.
6th. And within the first 3 months, actually, Oprah Winfrey was launching, she was ending the Oprah Winfrey television show and launching the OWN network.
Okay.
And it happened, I don't know if I would have, I don't think I would have maybe healed the way that I did if it wasn't for OWN sort of coming into focus during that time. And I think it's kind of interesting because in many ways, some might look at the OWN network and what she was planning as sort of a flop. However, for me, it was a really big moment because it was sort of like this focus came in with actually Dr. Maya Angelou,
Right.
hugely influential in my healing. And then also when and as the television series of that 25-year Oprah Winfrey television show ended, she launched that OWN in September. And all through that sort of process, it just sort of allowed me to focus in on actually self-wellness. And it was really, really powerful. So those messages sort of started to come through, I think naturally by what was going on, but they just seemed to sort of almost fuse with me. And that's actually kind of the how.
Oh, okay. So you obviously had been a musician before, right? This,
Yes, yes,
right.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And then you sat
So
down more too after.
yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing because so again, there's that prepared being, preparation meeting the point of opportunity.
Hmm.
And the thing that happened for me is I was always sort of what would be considered a gifted child. I was noticed for my musical abilities when I was younger, and I ended up going to Catholic sort of specialized private slash public school that was focusing on the arts. So choir and orchestra program. It's called St. Mary's Choir and Orchestra Program in London, Ontario in Canada.
Okay.
And I was asked to audition to be kind of a child that was accepted to that when I was in grade 5. So I was probably around 10.
Wow.
And I was accepted, and my mother actually made me go. That was actually the way that went down. I actually said no way to my mother, and she was like, "Oh no, 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 you're going." And she sort of, I went kicking and screaming, and then I actually fell in love with it within the first 2 weeks because it was just a natural. I got to be who I really am in that sort of enriched environment, and we got to sing and basically play an instrument every day. So it was
Oh
great.
my goodness. Wow. Well, moms sometimes
Moms
really,
know.
really do know,
Moms know. Yeah.
Absolutely. I know Burton Cummings, and I know he praises his mother for sitting him down at the at the piano and saying, you're doing this rather than going out and playing with your friends, and look where, like he says,
Yeah,
look,
that's what
I
happens.
guess it
Yeah.
kind of worked out, mom, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
exactly. Yeah. So for you, music has, been a tool of healing for you. And I mean, it is for so many people as well. But how did, you know, personally help you through your process of grief and find
Yeah.
peace?
Well, the thing that's kind of interesting is I feel like just looking at it backwards in retrospect now, because I've been doing this, publicly for 14 years now.
Okay.
So the thing that happened is I was sort of reluctant when I first started doing this. I had tried basically songwriting when I was about 20. And I've always had this kind of call that I would become someone that's, for lack of a better word, is famous. I've always sort of had this inclination and knowing that, I've been to psychics that had told me that I would actually become very famous many, many, many times. And I say this with humility. I'm just sharing what sort of, the lead up to all of this. And the thing that happened is when I would go to write a song when I was 20, after, I went kind of as far as you can go with music conventionally, being trained,
Right.
professionally. And then basically, I just gave it up when I was in my 20s because I could never finish writing a song. So I could always write a half of a song and never finish it. And
Interesting.
I never knew what to say. I never knew what I really wanted to say. So the thing that happened is after my dad died, I had left music pretty much from the time I was probably about 21, kind of left it.
Right.
And then when I was 34 I had just turned 34 when my dad died. And I had, gotten married and all of the things that happen in your 20s into your early 30s. And then basically when my dad died, I sat down at the piano and music just started flooding, like coming out of me like crazy music. It just
Wow.
opened up this whole thing that I didn't have before. And God sort of asked me that I was to share this publicly. And I remember being completely like, no way, like no F and way,
Yeah,
like not
exactly.
happening. Yeah.
Not doing it.
So not doing that. And then what happens when you're asked and called is you sort of have this moment of like where you have to sort of almost rise up to the occasion with the silence of you saying no to the beloved. And I just felt so horrible about saying no that I almost had to sort of get out of my own way. And then I started to inch my way towards the public side of things. And I started actually with a suicide awareness campaign. That was my first song that I released.
Oh, wow.
Was used actually by many different charities and organizations for suicide prevention around the world, actually. And that started this whole thing that started to bloom. And that's kind of the how it started. And then
Hmm.
just one thing led to the other.
Yeah, well, that was my next question actually is, how did your own healing journey, right, influence your
Yeah.
approach to conscious healing music,
Yes. Well,
right?
and so conscious, yeah. And the thing that I can say about this is the thing that's very interesting about my collection of music. So I'm working on my ninth project. I know in the beginning, I think we had talked about Spheres of Love. I wrote that actually in 2021,
Hmm.
just to put the timeline on that. And it's been being used. That one's a really big album that's used more and more around the world.
Right.
And my ninth project right now is kind of what I'm working on. And the way I look at all of my music, because it was from 2011 until now, which is 2025 for a timeline factor,
Okay.
is it's really a healing a guide really for the heart and the soul. And it's for what I feel is very much an ascension to become your highest self and manifest. So all of my whole body of work, which is almost 100 songs,
Oh
are
my
all
goodness.
about diving within the inner landscapes of your heart and your soul. And my
Right.
music supports the heart and soul of the listener. So that's sort of the healing process is my own healing with God actually is, it's universal in the sense that we're all healing from something.
Right. Well, definitely, whether we want to know it or not, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. So your personal story and message, with regards to the new, what can listeners expect to experience in the new album that's so close to your heart?
Yeah, so this new album is kind of an interesting thing because so the title of the new project that I'm doing is called Sunshine.
Right.
And so I feel like this new album, and keep in mind all of my music has much been a crowdfunding through Kickstarter. I've used Kickstarter for all of them, but
Okay.
they're crowdfunded. So the way I like to look at my music, and it's very specific because the energy that's in it is sort of like an infinite love battery, is kind of how I see it. And so when you plug into music, people don't really understand that music is a vibrational intelligence from your heart and your soul. So as a listener, it's the one thing, the inner landscape is where my music comes from.
Mhm.
And then it can go out of me into another human being, which is the most sacred thing that you can actually do in my mind. And for me to be inside another heart when you listen to my music is an emotional intelligence that you almost need to have that sacred technology of another heart and soul to hear it. So the way I look at all music and this new project in particular is going to be about all of the liberated love, sunshine that I've experienced, I think, after all of the healing journey that I've had these last 14 years. So this is sort of like the celebratory album in many ways of just the success that I think that the world needs to be reminded that, love is still in charge here. you know,
Right.
Good things are still happening, even though it looks really, really dark at times. And I feel like right now we're at that part where I think we need to remember that humanity needs to come together. These times of divisiveness, all of these things, we need to start celebrating the good things. And this album will be to sort of cater to a lot of that.
Right. And with regards to that, I'm going to, post a link with regards to how people can support it, because it is so worthy of support. You are so worthy of the support for this to
Thank
get
you.
out, because you are so right with regards to what's going on, the divisiveness, the fear, continual dribble of fear, and
Yeah.
people forgetting what we're really here for, right? What
Mm,
what we really are here for. And it is all about that, which is love. And your work, especially, I'm thinking in terms of what you've been through, with your father, and the impact it had on you. What do you wish people would understand about grief and healing, and the importance of love through all this? What would you like people to understand about this?
That's a good question. I think ultimately, I think the thing that we need to remember most importantly right now is that the inside of us does create the outside experience that we have. And I think the thing that I've really learned about my life is that you have sort of a choice to choose to either amplify fear or amplify love. And if you want to have love surrounding you, you need to amplify it. If you
Mm.
want to have really scary people and scary things around you, amplify fear and see what happens. So I think we need to become a lot more conscious about and I like to look at life very much like a microphone. And
Okay.
I think as a singer, I really relate to a microphone. People don't really talk about this, but we are really amplifiers. And so in our life, if you're talking, crap about people in your
Right.
everyday life, and all you're doing is purging how horrible things are, what happens is you're not really using your sacred technologies to the highest capacity. So I think we need to start looking that we're amplifiers. So for me, one of the things that I've really kind of embraced is understanding that I amplify love. And when you amplify love, love surrounds you. And as a singer, it's very interesting to me because what you're seeking is also seeking you.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
a lot of my fans have become very important part of my life. And my personal friendships have changed because a lot of the fans that came into my life then became my friends. And it's very interesting if you start looking at life as an amplifier and being responsible for the energy you bring,
Right.
being responsible for the choices you make that surrounds you. And actually, when that happens, when you're not wearing a mask or, being a persona of some version of yourself, when you're really living from your heart, your relationships get better, your life gets better, and the people that are around you, in some ways, maybe even might reflect heaven back to you.
Mm.
And I really feel for me, heaven is really created from a respectful love that's shared in true form in life. And I have to tell you, I experience the most incredible miracles all the time with the people that are surrounding me. And I think it's because I amplify love. And
Right.
just imagine in the world if everyone started to be consciously aware of amplifying love or fear. And I think, it's not really some new thing that I'm talking about. I think that we've kind of known about this for a while, but I just don't think we really kind of put maybe the energy or the willingness behind it to do it properly. And I think you're doing it right now as well. So we're seeing the world really change by who's getting involved in love. And, you create love, obviously. Look where we are right now.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's fascinating how you came into my life. Dr. Bruce Lipton, I know him and brought him to Vancouver when I was living there to do
Right. I
workshops.
forgot about the connection. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, it was through a newsletter that of his that I was reading where he was talking about you, right? And I went,
Mm.
my God bumps, the goosey
Yeah.
bumps came up on my
Yeah.
spidey sense, and I went, I just know you in some heartfelt way, and that's why I reached out. And and here you are, with regards to your ministry, and I was on that path at one point. That's another whole story, but the fact of the matter is it is about that. It is about not being afraid to reach out, to
Mhm.
express more and share more about one like yourself to the audience, which is now, not just mine, but yours as well. And it's to share that love. And, what you just said about I love it, it's the microphone, right? And it's like a speaker and sharing that love and then, being in a sphere of that, right? And
Exactly.
it just radiates out. And yeah, exactly. We really do not have a middle road anymore. We are either love or fear. So
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing, I was just listening to a study being done, and I think it was called the Spain scale, and it's this new study. And one of the things that they've noticed is they sort of did this new test where they were basically looking at how the body responds energetically to different nuances like love, joy, peace, happiness, prosperity, those sorts of things.
okay.
And something that is really interesting is they didn't anticipate the most energy actually that was recorded and capable of being recorded came from authenticity. And I think what's really interesting is that you can tell when someone's not authentic, right?
Right.
Human beings are really, really good receivers of, maybe, like, let's call it a bullshit detector.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I think that there's a lot of people in, I'm going to say, in the spiritual world too, that are bullshitters. And I
Oh,
think
yes.
that they love about this new study is that you can tell when somebody's truly authentically, sharing something that matters to them. And our human interest and our human curiosity knows to decode it and get more interested in whatever is sort of being talked about, as long as it's authentic. And I think, to your point with Bruce, and I've met a lot of famous people in the spiritual world,
Mhm.
and I'll just tell you, there's a lot of people that are full of,
Yep. Oh, yeah.
and I really feel that the thing that I really love about Bruce, and I know him, I've sat with him at his private house. I've sang for his 80th birthday. I've worked with him on stages with thousands of people. And I met him at the United Nations headquarters in New York City. That was in 2017. We were both invited to the headquarters of the UN to do something for the International Day of Yoga Committee at the UN. Big
Oh,
mouthful.
wow. Yeah.
And we shared the stage, and we both fell in love with each other because of our authenticity, for our passion to help the world and humanity. And I think one of the things that I love that you shared in this is that Bruce has probably the most joyful spirit of anyone I've ever met in my life. He
Mhm.
also he's the one person that will, if there are 1,000 people at one of his shows, he will wait until the very last person is done in the lineup and sign every single book and meet with every single person. And he
Yes.
does it every single time. And I really respect him for so many reasons, but mainly how he treats everyday people. And
Hmm.
I think one of the things that I really love about the connection of you with this is that you've actually worked with him. That's very powerful. And I
Yeah.
truly love that you did that.
Well, yeah, he shifted my world
Yeah.
big time. Just, and, it was like, wow. And I was privileged and honored and humbled to have him,
Yeah.
come and do what he did. And yeah, he's going to actually be on my podcast down the road when he's got a little bit more, he's working on other projects, as you know. So
Yes.
now, with regards to your music and you helping, thousands of people through initiatives like, you know, free hearing aids in Vietnam, for goodness sake. Can you explain on that?
Yeah. That was so cool. First of all, shout out to the Canadians on that one.
Okay.
So I was this is such a, oh my God, that's such a big story. Okay, how do I tell this story? So, long story short, I'm going to condense it. I met this man through actually through Hay House and Dr. Christian Northrup. She was actually giving a lecture,
Mhm.
and one of the most beautiful Canadians that I've met, who actually owned Breton Steel. They call him this Man of Steel,
Okay.
and he was probably, I think when I met him, he had just turned 50, so probably around that age. And he fell in love with my work and my music. And basically, in the process of getting to know me, he was starting this thing called organic radio. And he wanted to have conscious music on this radio platform that he was creating. And he's a very wealthy philanthropist, this man.
Okay.
And his name's Marco. And he was obsessed and beautifully inspired by the Starkey Hearing Foundation and Bill. basically Bill, the founder, Bill Austin is his name, and he just had this profound connection to this man who's a billionaire who owns, I think that there's 3 or 4 hearing companies in the world. They're the one of the biggest US ones.
Okay.
And they have this charity, and they would go and do free hearing missions. And actually, this man wanted me to experience what it feels like to turn on someone's hearing aid for the first time that they've heard.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I have to tell you, I thought it would be cool. I thought it would be amazing. And first of all, whenever you do these sorts of things, what people don't tell you is so much work. Okay. So you have to fly all the way to these places, and it is grueling work,
Right.
and it's hot, as you can imagine, in Vietnam. And, I don't think I've ever sweat more in my life, but it was the most beautiful thing because he taught me what it feels like when you give the gift of sound for the first time in a child's ear was the most powerful. And when you see a child react once they have a mild hearing corrected to being able to hear having not heard before,
Oh,
I mean, I cry. I've never cried
oh,
like that.
yeah.
No.
I,
Yeah.
yeah, I can, yeah. I, I mean, yeah, it would be, I'm speechless, really,
Yeah. And
what it
so
would
in
be
that
like.
trip for 2 weeks, we actually went to 3 big cities, and we basically gave 2,000 people free hearing on that mission, and it was incredible. So it was one of those things where I left and I was just amazed. And the thing that's sort of sad about this story, which is, this is why you say yes and let God take care of the details, but
Right?
actually, right, I guess about a year after we got back, actually, Marco was diagnosed with pretty much terminal brain cancer and actually has passed away. So he died very young. I think he was 54 when he died. And I
Mhm.
went and actually sang at his funeral. And the thing is that this is why, none of us are promised tomorrow.
No.
And I want to say, if you have something on your heart, do not delay to get it done. Start working toward it. And I think just one of the things that I've learned in my life is, just say yes and let God sometimes do all the heavy lifting, but just say
Hmm.
yes, figure out the details.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so true, what you say. I always start and end my day with, God, show me the way.
Yeah.
because
Me too.
because I don't know,
I don't know.
I'm just here, God, and use me and show me the way, right? So,
Um,
with Paul, with balancing your personal pain and with such profound acts of kindness and service to others, how do you do it?
yeah.
How do
Well,
you
that's,
do it?
I think, like anything, it's one of the things that is really, I've been reflecting a lot about I'm writing a book right now. So I'm kind of going
Mhm.
through old stories. And one of the things that I think I realize more and more the older I get. So I am gay. So I think one of the things that I just want to talk about is that, when I was born, it was 1977, just to
Okay,
give you and it was the thick of the AIDS epidemic. The start of it really was in the late 70s into the early 80s.
right.
And I remember when I was a kid, I grew up basically in the context of, if you were gay, it was a life sentence that you thought you would be dead by the time you were 30 is kind of what they told us,
Oh,
and when I look at that now, I kind of am shocked that that was my childhood. But I think the thing that I realize more and more about one of the things that happened as a result of that is
hmm,
it made me very resilient on one thing, which was self-love. And I think that self-love is the great and self-compassion actually, but
right.
it's one of the greatest things you can actually do to enable yourself to heal. And I think that when you truly start liking and loving yourself, and I don't mean like the egoic kind of love. I mean like genuinely having a a compassion for the things that have been hard in your life and for you loving your way through it. I actually think that your life changes because you start to treat yourself with respect and you start to put parameters around what you'll accept and tolerate and what you won't. And I think that when you start doing that and identifying and mapping that out, you actually are able to help more people. And when you serve others, first you have to serve yourself, I think, with self love. But then
Hmm.
when you serve other people, that actually becomes part of your healing and your joy starts to rise up again. And if anybody's ever been through trauma, I think the saddest part about it is that you kind of lose your joy.
Oh,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
The thing that
Absolutely.
I really felt like after my dad died is I lost, and I don't think you'll ever be quite the way that that joy was before, but you have to find a new joy. And the new joy for me is something that I'm really interested in exploring when you serve other people. And that joy is almost like it's the only thing as close to the old joy that I can get to.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I sort of look at my own healing and helping other people as sort of my whole journey. And that's the how.
And that's the how.
Yeah.
So with, with your global experience and, performing at the UN and working with adults and children and all these healing groups, etc., how do you think your music and message can help the world during times of collective suffering and crisis, which is what we are in now? It is a collective
Yeah.
trauma bond that we are in. Whether people want to admit it or not, they are being affected. I mean, and
100%.
this is not about being negative. This is if a person is from another country, their family immigrated like mine did from Poland, and the things that went on there at the time they were, young, and then coming to Canada, it's in my DNA. And and so now with what's going on, it's like it's kind of a little stir in the pot. It's stirring up the DNA because it remembers
Of
from
course. Yeah.
the ancestral lineage of that of which was going on then. So it is recreating some of the traumas from that, but it's also stirring up new ones. So, with all that's going on, how do you think your music is and message is going to help the world during times of this suffering? How is it going to do it? I believe it is, but how do you?
So the thing that, that's a really excellent point that you've brought up. And I think it's one that so in order to, I always like to go to one sort of point whenever you're looking at to heal anything,
Right?
you have to know, first of all, you have to feel it to heal it is sort of, the old adage, right? And I think the thing that a lot of people are is I think people are in denial and what we do is we bright light. So, and I say this because I know that's actually something that I have done is it's called bright lighting something, which means that we basically want to bypass the pain and or the suffering because we just want to focus on the good and forget about the other.
Right.
And this is not always the best scenario because what we're doing is we're not really going to have the ultimate like whole healing because we're not really willing to go into look at what you just talked about. And the thing is that all of us, I mean, in these countries that, America and Canada, just as an example, all of us are not indigenous to these lands.
No.
We came in through settlements. And the other thing in that is that we, the history of like, from slavery of the black slave sort of story, it's a horrible story that needs reconciliation
Mhm.
and we can't bypass what we did, and these are all coming to the surface to be reconciled right now. And our world is in
Right.
trigger right now.
Right.
And what's happening is these politicians are coming in and stirring the pot and
Mhm.
evoke all of these really, really brutal truths. And if you think in politics, one of the things that you have to remember is it's divide and conquer.
Right.
This is their model. This is not mine.
Yep.
Okay, so we are the almost like the countermeasure that goes, well, wait a minute, stop. Let's not live in a trigger. Let's stop that. Settle into our breath, go inside our heart, know that we're safe. And in Louise, this is where Louise's work with affirmations is very
Hmm.
powerful. So, in the infinity of life where I am, all is perfect, whole, and complete. I am safe. It's only change. I am safe. It's only change. So I think we need to start by like being the parent to us now, like the almost calming of the inner scared child. And then we have to get to a place where we are calm inside of ourselves to make the best decision in every moment. So I think like in all of this, music is a great accelerator of this. You know, the reason why a parent or, a mother or father sings to their child is to soothe them when they feel unsafe.
Hmm.
So I think we need to remember what music is music is a soothing, divine, sacred, very, very old technology, by the way. We are
Yes.
vibrations. They've been singing to children forever, we need to remember that sometimes it can be as simple as just taking 3 minutes and calming down. you know? And that's where music kind of comes in, is if it's almost like a toolbox. And if you have a few songs that really settle you, you can,
Hmm.
I always like to remind people when they listen to a calming song or music is you can close your eyes, you shut off one sense, and you can just settle into your heart again. Take a deeper breath and not be in that fight or flight state of mind. And then you can make a better decision.
Mm.
So I think it starts with just understanding, what is music and
Right.
what can it do for the physiological part of the body. The only time the whole brain lights up is when we listen to music.
Hmm.
We want to look at the left and the right hemisphere and all of the workings of the brain with music. And I think people have dumbed down what that is, but it's a big deal, you know?
Oh, huge.
Huge.
Absolutely huge. Music has, yeah, it has been my go-to, my must-have for a very
Yeah.
long time, and myself, like you, with regards to the loss of a parent. My mom passed away at, when she was 41, I was 14. And
Mhm.
yeah, it
It's
was my
very
go,
young.
it was my go-to, it absolutely was. And I still have moments of those songs that I played over and
Mhm.
over and over again that I still listen to inside, right? And with my grandchildren too, music has been
Huge.
huge, absolutely. And speaking of music, your new album, the Sunshine, right? Album being currently funded by your devoted fans. How important is this community support to you? And
Oh my God.
what does it mean to have a fan base so passionate about your work and mission?
Well, what's really cool, so it's every album that I've done it with this has been so different. So the last one it was funded in less than 48 hours, okay?
Oh my
So I had
goodness.
one person actually that he was having miracles in Russia actually, and sent me the entire amount of money that I needed to record the last project. So Spheres of Love was like really fast. So this next one, it's actually been 25 days today, and
Hmm.
it runs for 60 days, this crowdfund. So it
Okay.
runs until May the 4th, just so you have a timeline.
Right.
And in the first 3 weeks that it's sort of been live and active, I've raised pretty much $13,000 of the 20,000 minimum budget.
Oh,
And
congratulations.
it's amazing. And so the
Hmm.
thing is that all of these, and really, music, one of the challenging parts of music in the world of today is that if you listen to streaming music, is the stream per stream is 0.004 cents, which
Yes.
means that it's not worth a half a penny for a stream. So if you do the math, 100,000 of those streams is $4,000. Now, 100,000 streams is quite a big number to get $4,000. So to get to the 20 to even fund it is very hard.
My
So I
goodness.
think
Yeah, it's
the thing that is really beautiful about crowdfunding is people stepping up to help you when you need some help. And I
right.
think asking for help is not always the easiest thing. So I've had to have the humility in my music, just with the current state of the music business. And the reality is that my music wouldn't happen if it wasn't for crowdfunding. So I feel like my fans all know that.
Right.
And the more money I have to make an album, the better the album is, from the sense that I can hire the best musicians and the people that can make the most beautiful sound. So I think in the end, I feel very grateful, and at the same time, it's vital that we crowdfund
Hmm.
musicians like independent. Yeah.
Well, and you're so right in, it is hard to ask for help for anything, let
Yep.
alone when it comes to, like you say, with funding. And sometimes people really, a lot, not everyone, that's too big of a generality, but a lot of people they just don't understand what goes on with regards to, recording, the writing and the
A
recording and
big job, let me
this,
tell you.
the, stu- the getting the right studio, the producer, the engineer, the right backup musicians, studio musicians, all that. There's so much involved, right? And
Yes.
so I'm really wanting people listening right now to this interview to really go into your heart and just, when you've listened to music that has really touched you, know that Paul's music, because a lot of my audience don't know you yet, but they will now. So
Yep.
go into your heart and really know and listen to his previous, and know that what is coming is even going to be more so. And just help out. that's what we have to do in this world now is we really have to help out one another. We really do. So I'm, not pleading. I'm just asking for help that you help Paul. So,
That's beautiful. Well, and
yeah,
I think more than anything, one of the things that I really believe in the win-win outcome. So
absolutely.
to your
Absolutely.
point is, I mean, in this particular situation, when love is expanded, everyone wins. And if we want
Absolutely.
more love in this world, where do you think it's going to come from? It's a great question. Where do you think all the love in the world that the world needs is going to come from? It comes from within you.
Right.
And we want this world to be filled with more love and kindness and compassion. There's only one way that that happens is that's when you and I and everyone gets involved and puts it into the world. So
Exactly.
I think we need
Exactly.
to start remembering that we're all here to have these win-win relationships. And really the call to action that I just always like to say right now is just simply there's a $25 download option.
Hmm.
So if you donate $25 for this, which is the downloaded version, you can buy a CD for $30 if you like, but those are the two calls to action. Just so you know, there's a value dollar on it. And if you
Right.
can't afford $10 is great. And that can go into the production of this as well.
Exactly. Exactly. And it will happen. It will. I
Oh gosh, yes. It's
absolutely.
already,
It already is. It is already
yeah,
happened. It's
exactly.
just a matter of the pieces coming into place, right?
Exactly.
So,
Yes.
before we close here, I want to ask you, you've, achieved so much already. And
Mhm.
but as someone who's always focused on self-love and healing, what's next for you in your personal and professional journey?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that I'm working on right now is I'm writing a book, and I feel like one of the next things for me is just I know that I have a lot of work to do to help other people.
Hmm.
And I think when you've been sort of down the roads that I've been down, and I know a lot of wonderful people, I'm also a connector of many, many people getting together. So one of the things I just had a tea with someone on Friday, so just a few days ago, and she lives in Europe. And the thing is that music opens doors. So I know a lot of people and I help a lot of people by connecting people that wouldn't be able to meet otherwise.
Right.
And I think I'm really interested in the synergies and I think just the divine connections that tend to be coming together right now. So I'm somewhat of a liberator for people and helping people sort of thrive at what they're doing. So I'm interested just, making sure that we just keep moving the conscious sort of human collective together with love. And I think that's sort of what I'm really interested in right now and doing and pursuing.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And one final question, because for those who might be facing their own battles with grief and loss, and mental health, what words of encouragement can you share to help them start their healing journey?
Yeah, well, one of the things I remember that happened for me is first of all, there's two things I want to say to this. Number one, you matter.
Hmm.
I think what happens so often, I just want to say what suicide really is when someone gives up on this planet. Like that's actually kind of what, if you really just want to break it down,
Hmm.
it's really someone saying that they don't really want to be on this earth anymore. So
Right.
I think number one, you are not an accident. You are here for a reason. And I think it begins with understanding that first, then recognizing that you don't need to defend your worthiness to anyone. No
Beautiful.
one. I mean, zero.
Right.
The only thing you need to do is just breathe. And you start with that breath and you remember that it's connected to the first breath you ever took. And if you maybe had a pulmonary issue when you couldn't breathe on your own, someone helped you. But your breath is connected to that first one that you ever took from your mother's womb. And the thing I want to say is there comes a time, I remember when I did this myself, when I was in like anguishing grief. I remember having to draw a line in the sand, metaphorically,
Okay.
and saying, this is it. I am no longer going to be on this side of the line and I'm crossing over into a new life.
Wow.
And from that point forward, I promised myself one thing is that I would be worthy. And I think, my father, just to put this into perspective, my
Right.
father was actually the second suicide because his dad took his own life when he was 9 years old. So my dad lost his dad. My dad's dad jumped off of a bridge. And my dad was 9. He was the oldest in his family. And my father, I always like to celebrate that my father lived for 56 years.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
we look at suicide as sort of this, like, I don't know, like this thing that's like this ending I don't even know how to say other than just like it's always looked and frowned upon, and we never celebrate how long someone lived or how they lived. We always just focus on how they died. This is a silly mistake we make, and so we need to remember that no matter who you are, however someone dies, we celebrate that they lived. And I
Exactly.
think it starts by yourself living. And I think all of this comes together in the end to just make sure that you know that this life is a gift. You have so much power in you. You have no idea. And all it takes is for you to recognize your worth. And once you do, once you flip the switch on, everything changes. And you have to just take little teaspoon by little teaspoon
Hmm.
sometimes.
Hmm.
And it doesn't need to be, you don't need to go run a marathon, just one day at a time. And just to end this sort of point in this conversation this way, I remember where I was so in my grief and all I needed to do, I loved sleeping. So at the end of the day, shutting it all off and just
Right.
going to sleep and having that moment of that break at night, take it and just embrace that break when you are depressed, just sleep and just start a new day fresh. Every day is fresh with no mistakes. You just start again.
Oh, I'm, I'm, yeah. I, what can I say? You said it all. And I'm so grateful to you. For you in my life now. And I feel so blessed, so honored and humbled. And I'm so grateful that you shared that because people are hurting. And
Yeah, they
so
are.
just listen, people, please listen to what Paul has just said. And on that note, I, I, I just, like I say, I'm, I'm so grateful, Paul. Thank you so
Well,
much
thank
for being here today. And
You're so welcome. And the other thing too is before we just finish this off too, I just want to invite people too. So one of the things that I love about music is it creates community.
mm,
So, you know, we both have beautiful communities and don't be a stranger. Reach out to me on Facebook or Instagram. I have a very active, you know, my favorite thing is when people become friends in my communities. And I've seen it so many times where friends, because they get talking to each other on Facebook or whatever, they become friends and then they form this whole relationship.
yeah,
So I think just to remember that we have communities. That's what we do, right?
right.
So just to reach out to either of us and be a part of our communities and, you know, expand your
Absolutely.
love that way, you know?
Absolutely. To know that you are not alone.
Absolutely.
You are not alone. Just reach out
Yeah.
because that's what it's all about is just know you're not alone. Somebody is here
Yeah. And we care
and we
genuinely.
care.
Like this is our
Absolutely.
life, right? So
You
yeah.
got it. I just know that from the more that I give out, there is so much more to give out.
Yes.
It
Amen.
just, yeah. So thank you, my love. Thank you
Oh God,
so
thank you.
much. I can't wait to release this tonight and so excited, so excited. So thank you, Paul, and we will continue another
Okay.
time. All right. Blessings.
Beautiful. To be continued.
Blessings. Yes, to be continued.